Hi, my name's Krishna Chinthapalli. I'm the BMJ Clinical Fellow at the International Forum. And this year at the International Forum, we decided to do something new. It's a special event. It's called the £1 Million Challenge. And the point of this event was really to engage junior doctors and have more sessions for them and run by them, essentially. So we had this event on yesterday evening. It went very well, and we have 3 of the lucky 4 who made it through to the session itself with us today. So I'll introduce them in turn. So first we have Damian Rowland, who's a paediatric registrar, and he was the winner.
Morning.
Yeah. Then we have Helen, who's a foundation doctor, who's a runner-up there, and Ruth Hartley, who's a geriatrics registrar, who was there as well. So we're just going to have a chat about the whole event and what the contestants felt about it. So does anyone want to say what they think?
I think it was absolutely a fantastic idea and a fantastic opportunity. I think not only for us as contestants, as it were, it was and it did feel like a competition with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire music blazing in the background as we walked up. But I think also for the audience, for me personally, to be able to present in front of the really international judging panel. So there's not going to be any time in my career where I get to basically talk directly to Don Berwick, Fiona Godley, who was chairing, Fiona Moss. I mean, it's fantastic. E-patient Dave in there as well. And that's the kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I think their questions and their enthusiasm, coupled with the audience's enthusiasm to get involved, really made it a learning experience for everyone. I think not just for us as well.
I think that very much helped me was the fact that because you were presenting to such a learned audience, you got to hammer out the idea, so to actually set it down and say, well, this would work, and their enthusiasm in responding to it made me think, this will work. I mean, well, you need to take it forward, and you don't need the £1 million to take it forward, because there are lots of the key points in each of our ideas that can go forward without. I know you've both had interest from other people in the audience.
I think as a junior doctor just starting out in my career, the opportunity to get that kind of feedback from such experienced people and the networking opportunities that provided afterwards with both the judges but also some of the people in the audience who, it turns out, had such an interest in our projects and were willing to offer their services and their experience to be able to take them forward is something you just never get on any other platform.
Yeah, and so certainly from my point of view, organising the event, we felt very strongly we wanted senior judges, really respected, internationally recognised figures, and we wanted a mix. So we had a junior doctor, Joe Ing, we had e-patient Dave to provide the patient perspective, and we had, of course, Don Berwick and Helen Bevan and Fiona Moss. How was it preparing for that? I know quite a few of you were quite nervous.
Well, what was interesting about it is, I wasn't sure how big it was going to be. So that it's nice to see so many people turned up, but I didn't have the expectation that the hall would be full. But I should have done, because I know Helen very well, and actually she'd been really passionate about it and enthusing people, so I should have expected it to be bigger. But actually, the moment I realised actually we had an awesome judging panel, a big audience, I began to realise actually it couldn't be quite as jokey is the wrong word, but it did add a bit of tension. But I think actually that made it a better event, because actually we all went out there and I think everyone gave a very good talk. They gave a very good spiel. Everyone kept to time. It's really embarrassing when you're given a 5-minute deadline and you waffle on, and no one did that. They hit everything. And I think so. It not only those nerves in a way helped, because it made it a very professional event, I think.
What about you?
Yeah, I think having the senior judges, I think probably we all, when we first put in our short 100 words saying what our idea was, didn't necessarily have the expectation that it would go any further. But then when we started to gradually over time find out it was going to be a much bigger event than we probably initially anticipated, it probably made everybody raise their game a little bit and provide some really sort of professional sort of looking pictures to the judges. And the fact that everyone took the idea so seriously, we had such a esteemed chair for the event, that it gave it a lot more gravity than it would have had if it was just being run sort of with junior doctors without that professional bit behind it.
I know, because when we were talking at the start, we both said it seemed like a good idea at the time to submit, and then it just became more and more alarming as it approached. But at least all of us were delivering it in our first language.
Oh yes, no, that was awesome. What was her name? I mean,
Cecilia.
Cecilia, an incredible achievement.
Yeah, so unfortunately Cecilia's not with us here, but she's a doctor from Mexico who presented a pediatric project, which also went very well actually on the day. So in terms of preparation, of course, you've been interacting with me beforehand, and yes, it started off with a 100-word proposal, and then gradually I started wanting to see your slides and your presentations and wanting to check it ran to time and so on. So there was a lot of preparation involved, but how did you find the whole experience in terms of what you've learned from it and what the next steps are? It might help to talk a bit about your projects as well.
Yes, so my particular project was moving on from a piece of technology which we already have, which is the saturations probe. So it goes on your finger. Ooh, that goes on your finger and just measures oxygen levels, also automatically measures your heart rate. We now know through other pieces of research that you can measure a respiratory rate and a temperature potentially through the same device. And actually this is where the preparation comes in. So very many thanks to my wife, Katie Rowland, who helped me kind of envisage the first prototype of my device, which basically goes on the finger. It's solar panels, so it has a solar panel so it can work anywhere, and it just gives you a red, amber or green light depending on how unwell you are. It's interesting that this is obviously something from Blue Peter. But it was fantastic that when I show this to people, rather than my wife was forbid me from showing this, actually she is going to be angry because she said there's no way I want this to be seen anywhere. But it makes it very real. And although, yes, it is a peg in a box with some falling, but I had an idea. I can now show someone something. I've put it on my blog posting site. That went live on Twitter about an hour and a half ago. I've already had 5 responses, and I gather there has been interest from a technology developer in South Africa who watched on the video last night. So in the space, literally of 12 hours maybe, I've gone from just a novel idea that has started spreading potentially around the world, and I just think it's
so was this something that you'd never discussed before with anyone outside?
No.
Before?
Well, I hadn't even thought of it. When I saw, we all got sent I think it was an email. Any trainees registered got an email, £1 million challenge, 100 words. And that was the key thing to the success of this. Because had it been, I can't remember if I said this before, had it been a 2-page application form, I wouldn't have filled it in. There's no way. But it was only 100 words. Yeah. Actually, 100 words, I can do that. I've got this idea, bang, 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 submit. Don't expect to get anything back, but it made it possible to submit. And then it's just brilliant to see it go from 100 words into something tangible.
You're clearly slightly more concise than me, because I saw 100 words, I wrote 1,000, and then spent ages trying to get it back down to 100.
So if you both talk a bit about how you came up with your project and how it's been.
Mine was a very different sort of idea. My idea is to create a website where you get initially senior doctors to share experiences of clinical mistakes that they've made and what they would have done differently, with the idea being to try and create a culture where we can all talk about things that have gone wrong and try and get a much more open culture within medicine, which is what we really need going into the future, that's been highlighted recently. And I got this idea from a TED video that I saw last year with Brian Goldman, and sort of it grew from there, but never had any idea of how you would ever go about setting up something like that. And when I saw this, I thought, well, I've got this idea. It fits nicely into 100 words. So I did it. And again, didn't expect really to hear anything back. And I think having that impetus to then refine your idea and go forwards with it, when you've got to present it to what is now a very large number of people, it makes you think a lot more about it, how it's going to work, and make it sort of much more professional looking. And I, again, had the same as Damian, that afterwards I got offered with 2 different people that they already have a network and they would love to, work with me. They've got sites to upload videos that we could work with that. And, the judges all offered that they would be happy to make a video. So having those senior people that would be happy to make a video of their mistakes to start the project off. And it's something that was an idea a month ago that hopefully will become a reality in the next few weeks, just through this event and the opportunity it's given.
I think so. My idea is just to do with improving nutrition in people with dementia in hospital. It's something that has bugged me for a long time, is how poorly we deal with people with dementia in hospital, and how poorly we deal with nutrition in hospital. And I think this event just allowed me to hammer out exactly what it is that is the problem and how it can be targeted. Before, I've looked at sort of little parts of it, little interventions that have made a little bit of a difference, but never really involving the patient as the key person, as the person who really needs to drive it, and their relatives and carers, and how that can be used to advance plan and to really improve quality of life. And this allowed me to do that. It allowed me to hammer down exactly what the problem is, how I could structure an intervention, and really start to look at the details behind how it could be run and how it could be driven, and how necessary it is, because I don't think, even with it bugging me as much as it did, I don't think I'd quite realised the scale of the problem that we have with malnutrition in hospital in this country.
I think all 4 topics were very insightful in that the judges thought they were all great concepts, but obviously had to pick one to go forward with. But in terms of the event itself, so you had 5 minutes, so it's a very short presentation, and then you had 5 minutes of quite searching questions from the judges. And I wasn't there for the audience part of it, but I think they asked you some tough questions as well. And how's that made you develop your ideas and think about it since the event?
The interesting thing is that I did spend a lot of time thinking about how much finance I needed to put in the presentation, and eventually decided that I wasn't going to do a whole table of in and out costs, because one, I probably didn't really have the knowledge base to do it, and actually I was selling a concept or an ideal rather than fact, and it was basically the judges all turned around and simultaneously said, well, you're doing this on a wing and a prayer, Damian, and we like your idea, but you're pulling figures out as we're talking to you, which I was. I'll be quite honest about that. And it's interesting that I chose that approach, because having watched the actual Dragon's Den a couple of times.
Was this revision? Or?
Yeah, well, think about it. It's interesting that the number of times you see people fall over because they just haven't done their basic sums, and I've done no basic sums at all, so I deserved that type of criticism, and it's the judges clearly picked up on that. I thought the audience questions were really good, and it was interesting whether the judges would have changed their ideas having heard some of the questions. I got someone I know quite well stuck his hand up and said, well, you've missed a trick, you've missed out putting a GPS positioning thing on the probe itself, which would mean that you'd actually be able to track where these observations were coming from if you had a relay. Actually, what a mind-blowing idea that was, and I hadn't thought of that at all. Yeah. But actually, nice that extra incentive or extra idea came in from the audience.
Okay. What about you, Dee?
Yeah, I think the questions from the judges were very astute, and they really got the concepts, and then immediately all of them thought how they could take it in very different ways. So there were a lot of suggestions for my idea, especially from e-patient Dave, that if you could get a patient that the mistake happened to with the doctor and get both of them, how powerful that would be. And that's something I hadn't really considered before, and something we'll definitely look at to take forward. But also I think the audience, not only did they offer their sort of help and suggestions, but some of them also pointed out things that, similar ideas or things they'd seen or they'd tried, and had a lot of helpful advice, as well as questioning more how it was going to work, or the pitfalls that you probably hadn't thought of, which are all going to be important if you want to take your idea forward, because that's what you're going to need to work through.
Very much. I felt challenged on the scope of the project. Why is it just for one specific group of people in one specific area when the problem is so widespread? And it really is. I mean, it needs to be a universal intervention. It shouldn't even be an intervention. It should just be a routine thing that's done. And from the audience as well, I found it really encouraging because the questions, although they were challenging, they all seemed to be very positive. They were like, "Oh, this is a great thing that you're doing. You know, you really need to do this. These are maybe some areas that you could concentrate on that would make it better, that would make it easier to implement."
No, there was nothing negative
Yeah.
at all, which was...
Yeah, the judges are very good at that, weren't they?
Well, the audience as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody.
And Ruth, your plates with the food on them.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
So did the judges try any of that, or?
Well, no, they weren't
stuck to your
supposed to. They weren't
instructions?
supposed to try it because it wasn't all food.
Okay.
But I brought some plates along with pureed substances on that for them to recognise and for them to see against the different contrast plates. And it just illustrates that the most appetising thing on the plate was the body butter, rather than the pureed porridge and the pureed butternut squash, which just looked there.
So this was obviously the first time it ran. You guys are pioneers in being the first panel or set of contestants that we've had. How do you think the event itself went, and what would you suggest for next year if this was going to happen at next year's forum in Paris? Obviously, you're going to be there with your free entry.
Yeah, that's a very nice and unexpected prize. So thank you very much to the organising team for that. I think the... Clearly, everyone there, I'm sure that there will be people in the audience going, "Damn, I wish I'd applied because I've got something too." I think there is a challenge for junior doctors. Okay, I was already coming to the event and had managed to pay. This is a big event and it comes with a cost. I would love to see the opportunity for more junior doctors from all around the world to be able to come maybe just for this event, because it really could galvanise a whole cohort of, or the next generation, but actually enabling people to do that, especially in somewhere like Paris, which is relatively expensive, I think is something that the team should put their mind to. Please don't make it more difficult to apply. I think 100, maybe 150 words, but just that simple idea, I think, encourages people to get involved. And if you can get judges like you did this year, again, I think that credibility is so important. I think it was great to have a junior doctor on the panel, and it would be nice if that continues. But actually, I think it was those substance names that brought people in. And then I think people left quietly surprised that, and I don't want to do junior doctors down, but actually a group of juniors could produce some of the ideas that they had when they would not. If it had just been a junior doctor event, I don't think some people would have come.
Yeah, I think it's such a great platform and opportunity, and this is the first year, but it was so successful that it could build even more. I think what could be amazing is, in the true Dragon's Den format, is to then get people to mentor the projects and then get people to, you know, have it 1 year on. What's happened in that year? How has your project gone forward? And because those, you know, a small amount of mentoring from what was some great names, or even some of the other people in the room who put their hands up, you know, and would offer, you could make it into something that would create a pretty amazing legacy from the conference
already, because I'm presuming the reason why I've got a ticket to go back is that I might actually have to feed back on what I've done. And then that makes it very an incentive to get on and do things.
I think you raised a good point with the cost, because I think the cost of the conference is probably prohibited to a lot of junior doctors. I mean, we're both fairly, pretty much as senior as you can get for junior doctors, and our study budgets are bigger respectively, but certainly I know that it was very difficult for people who are more junior to be able to fund it, because if your study budget is only £200 and the conference is over 1,000, I mean, it doesn't, the edges don't really meet.
So the event overall, I mean, certainly the judges thought it was really good fun. They all really enjoyed it. You know, Fee especially as chair. So for those who don't know, Fiona Godley, the editor of the BMJ, was chairing the event, and we had Don Berwick and e-patient Dave de Bronckhart as the guest judges. And then we had 3 people from the Strategic Advisory Board. So we had Joe Ingemar, who's a junior doctor in Norway, and we had Helen Bevan and Fiona Moss, who both work in healthcare in London. They were very enthusiastic. The audience all loved the event, and I think they were all energized at the end with the music as well, and they all wanted their photos and came up and took photos of the winners and runners-up. And then afterwards as well, the people who streamed the video, they were telling us today that they thought the event was so good, they've put it up with the keynotes. So yeah, whenever anyone logs into the forum, they'll see the £1 Million Challenge.
Excellent.
Wow.
So any last thoughts from any of you?
I think definitely run it again, because you did a fantastic job really creating and running a de novo experience, which could have done horribly
provided the
wrong.
content, remember, so...
Yeah, but
No,
it has to
I
have a
think-
structure in order to work.
Yeah, I think that Krishna put in a lot of work giving us, but feedback and just developing our ideas and getting the format so that it worked. Otherwise, it could have been probably quite a dry, maybe lower quality event without, the format that he gave us and the advice and help. So I think the work behind the scenes made it such an amazing success that it was.
No, and I think one of the biggest thing that I will take away is actually it comes down to the networking opportunity. So I was rather rudely looking at my Twitter feed while the previous speakers were speaking, and it was because when you spoke, I know a couple of people in this organisation called the Network, which has 2,500 junior doctors, and I just pinged something saying, look, we can do this, okay, this doesn't need £1 million, and then the whole conversation started, and you hadn't even finished speaking. I mean, that was what was absolutely fantastic about it. It was just actually, damn, this is a brilliant idea, and we need to move on. And exactly the same for our Mexican friend, who's Cecilia, who her idea about ingraining some patient safety awareness in children links very nicely to a project based in London for a medical student who is getting other medical students to learn how to not be play therapists, but understand how you interact with children when they're undergoing stressful procedures. And there's a real amalgamation that can happen there. And I hope those two groups getting in contact with each other as well. Yeah. And these things would not have happened without this event.
Yeah, and even yours, Ruth, there's some great concepts there with just something as simple as changing the colour of crockery and cutlery and nutrition. I mean, I think most doctors don't realise how big a factor nutrition and hydration are in hospital, do they? We're so easily seduced into prescribing IV fluids or feeds.
And his name forgets me, but the chef who's been going around the NHS at the moment.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Because he'd be a brilliant person to contact with that idea, because he was focused on food, but actually another very simple initiative is to make the food easier to see. And that's something that he could really champion.
And different foods that are easier to eat.
Yeah. So that, again, there's a real possibility when you start talking about ideas.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks very much. And we hope to see you all again next year at the forum. And Damian, you'll be presenting the follow-up to your idea. Okay, so thank you everyone for tuning in. Goodbye from us.